Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and other assorted gender assignations. Welcome back to the Bored to Death Bingecast, where we take TV shows and movies and binge them in easily digestible chunks. I am Jay Winger, being joined by
Chris.
And we are back for part 2 of Season 3 of Netflix's Castlevania. For us, it's only been a couple weeks. For you guys, it's probably been closer to a month since we uploaded the last episode, given the backlog that we've amassed. But so where we left off, Trevor and Sypha have arrived in a town called Lindenfeld, where there's some weird stuff going on at the local priory.
Yes, there's apparently a portal.
A portal to hell. Sorry, the Infinite Corridor, as a new ally of theirs, St Germain, said. But the Infinite Corridor can basically open to many different worlds, many different times, including possibly hell. And St. Germain is interested in getting into the Infinite Corridor for reasons that I don't believe he divulged. I think they got distracted from it, or they were like, we need to just, enough talk, let's go deal with it, sort of thing. But the priory is, they kind of went a little bit crazy.
A little bit.
Because Cthulhu popped around and said hi.
Yeah, the damn Cthulhu demon thing. Actually, to be honest with you, because of the way it looked, it looked like the, I know you haven't seen Princess Mononoke.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's on our list of things to binge at some point, but at any rate.
Miyazaki stuff.
Yeah.
But no, the way that it was designed in terms of, like, first off, the colors that it was producing, it looked like the damn, what the hell was it called? The Spirit of the Forest from Princess Mononoke.
Okay.
It basically, like, during the daytime, it's this, like, majestic, I want to call it a deer, but I know I'm wrong.
Moose?
Think of moose was kind of semi-crossed with a deer, almost. But anyways, during
Big
the day...
antlers.
Yeah, literally. During the day, it looks like that. At night, it's just, like, 10-story tall, like, translucent being. Well, because of the way the colors look on that's the way the colors look on this demon thing with, like, just like the way the hair on the back of its head.
Weird little tentacle thing.
That's what it reminded me of, was that thing from Princess Mononoke.
Okay.
So...
meanwhile, Saint Germain, I mentioned this in the previous one, is an alchemist.
Yeah.
And he professes to be interested in books and
dead
languages and things like that. But really, he's an alchemist. And I mentioned this in the previous one. He is named after a real life person, the Count of Saint Germain, who professed to be an alchemist, was really probably more like a con man. Made his way around the various courts of Europe back in the 18th century. So this is him several hundred years before he technically existed.
Well,
but then again, you mentioned that he's in the games, at least.
So while we watch these, I'm sitting there on Wikipedia. Every single time they introduce a new character, like in this case when they introduced Saint Germain, I went on Wikipedia and I looked them up. Because I need to know who these characters are, because, once again, I never really played the games. So a lot of these characters are new to me. Granted, yes, I am a fan of the franchise. I've just never really played the games, because, well, I mean, I just get my ass kicked too often.
And the games kept jumping from console to console.
Yeah,
it doesn't always make it easy, because the times when we were playing these sorts of games, our parents didn't always necessarily get us every single console that we asked for.
No. Whereas nowadays, it's like, hey, I want that.
Yeah.
But anyways,
nowadays it's like, hey, I want that. I can't afford it, but...
but anyways, so I'm sitting there looking through all the different characters for this particular season when I get to Saint Germain. It said that in the game version, he is apparently a time traveler. Where he can travel through time. Well, in the show, on his chest, it's essentially a part of his outfit, is an hourglass. And granted, we haven't seen him do anything with it yet, so I'm kind of curious, like, is that...
I called it a time turner because of Harry Potter.
I'm like, so are they going to actually have him do this in the show, or was this just a way to reference that ability in the games, and that's it?
Yeah. I'm just looking up the accounts of St. Germain again, because he made a variety of different claims about himself, but yeah, I believe he claimed to be like an immortal due to the alchemy stuff.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe that's how they're going to explain it in the series. In addition to all that, that's just dealing with Belnades and Belmont.
Yes.
Alucard, meanwhile, is still hanging out at the ruins of his father's castle and the ruins of the Belmont estate, where he's made a couple of new friends from Japan.
Yeah, a brother and sister...
Sumi and Taka.
They are vampire hunters.
Yep. Well, they want to be vampire hunters, because they had belonged to the Japanese vampire general from season 2. Or they'd been enslaved by her anyway. And when she left to answer Dracula's call, they basically
went and slaughtered all of her guards.
And basically led a revolt, freed all the slaves, and so that so now, but then they came to find the Alucard, so they could learn from him how to become vampire hunters, because they know that another vampire is just going to move in and start it all over again back home, unless somebody does something about it. And they're all sort of having fun. Alucard's just relieved to have company again after at least a month's worth of isolation and loneliness.
Yeah, and him sitting there talking to his dolls with the voice, like essentially imitating Trevor and
Sypha.
Yeah, and Sypha. So I'm kind of curious to see where they're gonna take that.
Yeah, and then we have Carmilla basically enslaved Hector, dragged him back to Styria, where she is conspiring with her little sisterhood of fellow vampires to basically use him to make an army of night creatures, so they can then march back to Brayla and make themselves a little kingdom of their own, where they can basically enslave all the humans and turn them into cattle.
Yeah,
and
stick with Dracula's plan.
Hector's not too keen on that, given that
he's human.
More that he got his ass kicked by Carmilla the second that Dracula was dead. She basically slapped a collar around his neck, beat the shit out of him, and then forced him to march more or less barefoot behind them.
Well, when we last saw him in season 2, he still had his boots, and then when we see him first thing in season 3, they're gone.
Basically wore them out because they basically just forced him to walk along behind them. But one of Carmilla's sisters, Lenore, she's working on him. She's the diplomat of the group.
Yeah.
Seems like it's slowly starting to work, but it's still an uphill battle with that. And then we have Isaac, who's basically
he's creating his own army.
And he's basically like, he's like, you're all a bunch of rude motherfuckers, and I'm going to kill every single one of you for it.
But it's funny because he's trying to play nice at first. He's trying to be like, look, I'm just trying to pass through, but everybody's an asshole to him.
Exactly, and that's why he basically slaughters everyone. Granted, the first time he did it, we saw him do it. He basically just said, go ahead and have fun, eat your fill. I don't need any more bodies. Then when he got off the boat in Genoa, again, same thing happened. They, he was like, I'm just passing through. I won't do anything to anybody in this town. I just need to pass through. They're like, no.
No, like, turn around and leave. He's like, but my boat's already gone.
And they're like, then we'll push you into the harbor. And he's like, fine. I guess I'm going to kill you all. Throw the bodies to me. So yeah, that's about where we stand. Trevor, Sypha, and St. Germain are about to head into the Priory, I believe, when we left. And with the Styrians, let me flip back here in my notes. Basically Hector is starting to agree, and Lenore is offering him payment, and he basically was like, I could use some boots, or I could use some shoes, and some proper food, because when they brought him in, when they threw him in his cell, he was butt naked in a cold ass cell, and they cleaned him off literally by just dumping a bucket of water on him.
Bucket of ice water that the guard
literally just pulled out of the river.
No, I don't think it was even in a river. I think it looks like it because, like, if you remember, the top part of it was frozen over, and he broke it open with his.
It's even colder then.
Yeah, and he literally just brought it in, and I'm like, well, I already know where this.
Yeah, we both suspected that Hector was just going to get pneumonia and die or something.
Nope, he's got that strong will to live.
Who knows why, but whatever. So that's where we're leaving off. The two of us in our previous binge cast for this did speculate a bit on where we thought the series might be going, because they've already confirmed season 4.
Yes.
But at the time I was like, we should probably just stop and wait until the end of the season before we speculate any further. But at any rate, so
it's good to play that guessing game now.
Yeah, and we'll probably do some more of that after the binge. But so let's go ahead and pause this and get to the binge. Okay, and we're back after concluding season 3 of Castlevania, and well, we knew shit was gonna go wrong.
Go wrong, go south.
My God.
Where do we begin?
So we got a little bit more on St. Germain's backstory. We got a little nightmare / memory sequence of him, I guess, the first time he entered the Infinite Corridor.
Yeah, that was the first time that he had entered the Infinite Corridor, where he witnessed, because it looked like a bunch of windows opened up, and these are all windows from different
timelines and different worlds and stuff.
Yeah, and one of the ones where it looked like Africa.
Yeah.
And this big 2-legged robot thing, walked.
Basically walks past, and then, and as a nice touch, the robot was 100% CG and what was otherwise traditional animation.
Yeah, so kind of gave it that nice little touch. It's like, hey, this here's the future. The future,
yeah. He also saw something that looked like Aztecs, because the pyramids looked very Aztecian or Mayan, perhaps.
Probably.
I joked, it was like, did he suddenly walk into mummies alive?
I forgot all about that.
But then there was another scene that was another futuristic shot with a shattered moon, and then the ship from Prometheus took off.
It legit looked like the freaking the engineer ship from Prometheus, or Aliens, depending on which one you prefer.
Well, no, it's the space jockey. Ship.
Yeah, well, that's what they originally was, but anyways.
I prefer that over Prometheus, because the less said about Prometheus, the better. It wasn't very good, but we're here to talk about Castlevania, not Prometheus, and its many failures. He also saw Australia, with Uluru's Rock.
And the Aborigine.
With the little... I forget what it's called. I know they mentioned it in one of the Crocodile Dundee movies, because he used it to communicate with some of his buddies in the bush when they returned to Australia.
That was in the
second
film.
one.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me, I don't remember the name of the character, but there was a character in the X-Men comics. He was a mutant, but he used something like that to open portals to the Dreamlands kind of thing, or portals across the world sort of thing. It's been years since I saw that.
I was trying to think of whether or not it was the episode, whether or not he was in the episode where they introduced the Shadow King, but he wasn't.
I'm not talking about the cartoon. I'm talking about the comics.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. And then we saw this place I'm going to refer to as the Impossible Library. Because it was just MC Escher on crack.
In all honesty, I was joking with the way that they made the corridor look. It looked like one of the time streams from Doctor Who that the TARDIS passes through. I made the joke. I was like, "Is the TARDIS gonna go flying past him?" And he said, "Or a phone booth." I was like, "Shit, have one come in one direction, the other one come in the other."
And then you have a DeLorean go driving past in a separate one. But in the Impossible Library, we saw the person that I guess
saw
he
the
was
silhouette. We don't
a silhouette. I'm guessing like his wife, girlfriend, some ally of his.
They don't really go into detail on who it is because he just said that he was looking for somebody who
got lost in the corridor.
Yeah, who got lost in the corridor, and this is the person that gave him the little jewel that he uses to find these portals into the corridor.
And he explains later that the portals are actually invisible to the naked eye, which is why he needs the gem to find portals. But that comes in later. But while all this is going on, we had Lenore continuing to work her wiles on Hector.
Oh, she worked him all right.
Oh boy, did she! She was treating him pretty much like a person, but at the same time still somewhat dehumanizing him. She took him out for walkies.
She literally had a collar and leash on him and was walking him around the castle where they were talking, and he's just like, "Oh, this place will probably look a lot better during the daytime." She's like, "Well, I mean, I've never really seen the sun." Even before I was never a day person, kind of. So she's like, "Oh, well, I mean, how do you think this whole area would look during the day? It probably wouldn't improve it. And in fact, it looks better the way it does now at night."
And he wasn't disagreeing, but he was warming up to her. And then after one of these walks, she brought him back to a new, more comfortable cell. Bigger cell. It had, an actual mattress. Granted, it was made of straw and a blanket, but it had a desk and a chair and candles and candles so he could read. And she gave him like a book from their library, that he later revealed had like vampire philosophy.
I don't know if you noticed this or not, but the page that he was reading when we saw him reading the book had a illustration of Castle Dracula.
Interesting. Who knows? Maybe that'll come. That something like that will factor into later seasons if Alucard gets his hands on it.
Maybe.
Speaking of, the twins were basically still trying to learn more from him. He brought them down into the Belmont hold. Basically, it's like, if you want to become vampire hunters,
the Belmont
then check this out. These people made it their lives. Learn from them, and then and I'm teaching you this stuff so that you can then go and teach it to others. At the same time, though, they still believe that he is holding back information.
Yeah, because there's a scene where they're walking down one of the hallways in Castle Dracula, and they're asking him about magic weapons, and he goes, "Well, my dad didn't really like using magic weapons, so..." He
was already so powerful that he believed physical things should just be what they are.
And
hold on to that line; it becomes important.
Oh yeah, it really does.
And as for and speaking of like St. Germain, Trevor and Sypha talked about him, and Trevor basically said that he's a con man, but he seems sad. I feel like he needs friends, which is But while they're talking about that, Trevor brought it back to a line that was repeated, that was said earlier in the season, and this was in the first half. So go back and re-listen to that one. But the line was, if you don't know the whole story, you become part of someone else's. It was something that the ship captain said to Isaac. But it was while Trevor and Sypha were talking about St. Germain, he muses to her, it's like, I wonder if we've wandered out of our story and into someone else's.
It kind of reminds me, so not entirely off topic, but I've been binge watching Deep Space Nine, and I got to the episode where Cisco is suddenly on, like, I don't know, 1950 into
yeah, he gets like a head injury and wakes up back in the 1950s, but he's a writer.
Yeah,
and not Captain Cisco of Deep Space Nine.
And the episode ends with him talking to his dad on Deep Space Nine, and what he basically says is, "How do I know that all of this isn't just coming out of someone else's head, going on in someone else's head?" Yeah, so it's one of those, like, I guess I could call it
Am I a man dreaming that he is a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he is a man?
Exactly.
Or like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode where she wakes up in like an insane asylum and is told that everything that had happened to her was just a mad delusion, and the episode ended with her back, back to normal, but they never really quite answered. It was left uncertain whether it was genuinely an illusion cast by a demon, or whether she is genuinely someone having a psychotic break in an insane asylum somewhere.
So,
but yeah, similar sort of thing. Although we took it in a different direction with that little conversation, but that's where.
Like I said, I'm just saying that's what it reminded me of. Was, those little moments that seem to be in a lot of shows, actually.
Yeah. And throughout all this, St. Germain is still investigating stuff in the Priory as much as he can, because the monks don't let him go anywhere apart from the main church room.
Because they're like, you see that basement right there?
Stay out.
You don't get to go in there.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, free reign.
But he finds the Necronomicon or something.
Oh dear God! You were distracted.
I was jotting down notes.
And St. Germain goes and picks the book up, and I see the stitch work on it. I was like, dude, it's the Necronomicon.
I look up, I'm like, oh.
You're like, what? And I'm like, look at the book. And you see the stitch work on it, and you're like, dude, don't read from that.
Yeah, I was like, do not read that aloud. Because Evil Dead, you read aloud from that book, bad shit happens. Furthermore, Necronomicon translates to Book of the Dead. We remember the Mummy movies, the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies. What was the name of the book that Evie read from in the first book? First movie? The Book of the Dead. She read it aloud. What happened? The mummy came to life. Do not read aloud from books called the Book of the Dead.
Or Necronomicon.
Which still means the Book of the Dead. But don't do it. Just don't do it.
In fact, he even opens it up and he's sitting there just sifting through it, and I was like, dear God, it is. I was like, is it bound in human flesh and inked in blood? I mean, it was
we don't know,
bound in something.
There were pages missing.
There were 2 pages missing.
Yeah, I said pages, but yes.
To be exact, 2 pages.
And he asked Prior Sala about it, and Sala's, you could tell he knew what had happened to him.
He was just bullshitting him through the entire thing. He was like, I don't know.
And and so he finally leaves, but Germain basically told him, it's like, I said I wouldn't treat you like a madman so long as you don't give me reason. Yeah. And as for Isaac, by this point, he comes across an empty village, apart from one mad old woman.
Who is literally just sitting there, who I thought was blind. Because she was like, I could smell you.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I got the impression that she was saying that more that, like, I can sense that you're a forge master, because she called him on it immediately. But, and they have a brief little standoff. She shows that she does have magic of her own, but she then tells him about this town 30 miles up the road, which has been taken over by this mad wizard, who has basically enslaved everybody in that town and all the surrounding towns, and is basically using them to build something. It was never really clear what they were building exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of those villagers were kind of messed up in some way. Like, there was one dude who was trying to pick up this, looked like a 50-pound rock with literally a busted arm. Like, there was like a huge chunk of it that was just missing, bone was exposed.
Well, from what we saw of them later, and that happened in episode 9, but it was clear that the magic was basically overriding any sense of self-preservation.
Yeah, so they were literally just like zombies at that point. They were still alive.
But they were zombies.
Yeah.
And I liked the effect, though, of the spell that he put on them. I called it like a crown of thorns, because that's what it looked like.
That's what it was a crown of thorns, and it had the little diamond in the middle that was supposed to act like his eye.
Yeah.
So that way he could see everything.
It was like a full-on hive mind sort of thing. But so when St. Germain finally does get underneath the priory, well, he found out that demon, or night creature, that basically started the priory going mad, was still down there. It had been crucified, and it was still alive.
See, the funny thing is that it apparently told them to do that to it. Because apparently the demon had a plan of its own to essentially bring Dracula back.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this ties into something else. Before Isaac came across the village and the town, he stopped and basically made camp and we found out that one of the demons that he had created back in Genoa still had the ability to talk. It was this bug-looking thing.
It was a fly. It was the fly.
And I think the captions even called it fly eyes, but it basically still, well, Isaac asked it, do you still remember who you were? And it was like, sort of. It said I was a philosopher in Athens, and then they condemned me for it when the Christians took over, and suddenly they didn't like people asking questions about the nature of God and the divine, so they said that was a sin. And he basically lied to the judges and gave them the names of other people to try to save himself, and then they killed him anyway, and he got sent to hell, where he learned a lot more about sin and learned that I like it, and basically thanked Isaac for bringing him back to the world.
And then he was just like, here I am back on Earth. And that's when, like what you said, when he was talking about the whole sin thing.
Yeah.
But the bad thing is, that was the last time we saw him. He didn't pop back up again.
Well, who knows? Maybe in season 4 he'll turn up. I kind of hope that they don't just introduce some of these characters, give them speaking lines, and then just get rid of them.
All right, we'll put you off to the side.
Like the sea captain. It was Lance Reddick, and you only use him for essentially two scenes. That's a waste of a great voice actor.
And we'll see if they bring him back in season 4.
But it was that scene plus the revelation that the visitor, as Sala and the monks refer to the night creature they have tied up in their basement, was a night creature that had been forged by Isaac. And that made me wonder about whether some of, it's clear that some of them have wills of their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, they'll go off and and rampage if they're not given commands. We saw that with plenty of the night creatures that Trevor and Sypha had to deal with. Who knows? Maybe those were just demons that Dracula summoned and just set loose. But regardless, I feel like a Forge Master imparts some of their will on their creatures. So even when they're not close to the Forge Master, they still are basically acting in accordance with their desires. Because Isaac remained loyal to Dracula right up to the moment he got sent through a portal and wasn't able to take part in the final battle of season 2.
Yeah, because Dracula was just like, well, there's this human here who says that he's willing to sacrifice his life for mine. Nope.
Yeah.
Just shoved him through.
Because by that point, Dracula was really wanted to die.
Yeah.
It was that was the whole point of season 2, was that his whole crusade was basically a suicide pact. But that's why the Visitor was trying to basically open the portal via the Infinite Corridor to hell to bring Dracula back. Yeah, spoilers. But so I'm wondering, if that's part of how Forge Master magic works. I imagine we'll find out more in season 4, since Isaac's still kicking around and has got himself a whole town of corpses to play with.
Yeah, and then he when he was making his way to the magician, he told the demons, leave the limbs intact, but give them fatal wounds. Don't eat them. Don't eat any of them.
Because he wanted to have, he knows he needs an army to take on Styria.
So, what he ends up doing is he's doing his thing with his forged dagger, stab, demon. And then these people start fighting back. And actually start...
The wizard starts fighting back using those people.
Yeah, and they're actually killing his demons. They killed a pretty big one, not the 50-foot one that he summoned.
Yeah, but that big, beast one with the tail, yeah.
So that one got killed off, and, then Isaac is just like... And he gets to that tower with the glow that's coming out of the top of it. So he gets on his demon horse steed, makes his way towards that tower.
And he has some of his flying night creatures to back him up. And then the townsfolk just start floating up in the air too. It's like the wizard was like, oh yeah, I can do that too.
So they form a giant ball.
Yep. It was huge. It was more than half the size of the tower. The wizard's tower.
Way more. It engulfed.
And it was not just like an empty sphere. That thing had mass to it.
Yeah, and mass, weight, everything. And so
he summoned a 50-foot demon to basically hold the thing up so that he could get into the tower, and then and then the ball crushed it.
Well, the thing is that first he charged the dagger up, because if you notice, before it was just it's just a little glowy red. And then it started getting more and more intense until he saw one body coming towards him. He's like, that's the one I want.
Yoink.
Stabbed it, body falls, and next thing you see, big arm.
And then the thing stands up, and it's taller than all of the surrounding
It's taller
buildings.
than the whole freaking town. It goes on
Except
over.
for the tower, but yeah.
Yeah. So it goes on over. It's holding this...
It's doing the Atlas thing of holding the thing up.
Meanwhile, it's like... Was it charging electricity?
It looked like it. I don't know what that was about.
I don't know if it was trying to do that to electrocute the people or something, and maybe get them all to die and they would fall or something. I don't know what the plan was, but it didn't work because those balls just crushed this demon.
And then as Isaac's making his way up the tower, having to fight, the people. The enslaved townsfolk are literally crawling up the side of it and through the windows. I compared it to the Agent Smith in the Matrix sequels.
Well, I mean, because I'm a horror fan, it reminded me of the original black and white Night of the Living Dead, where the zombies were coming through the windows, their arms were all
I also
sticking
compared
out.
it to, I don't know the name of it, but you know the one I'm talking about. There's this Indian movie where it's like there's a runaway robot. It looks human, but it there's a bunch of other robot clones of it, and it basically can overtake them and make all their bodies into forms. So it makes a giant fist. It makes a giant snake at one point. It's I've seen clips of it, and I'm just like, what the hell is this? I need to watch this movie.
Bollywood movies, gotta love them.
Oh yeah. Bollywood movies, especially because of the action movie logic that they
you mean the ones where they don't have physics?
Yeah. But regardless, he fights his way up to the top of the tower where the wizard is, and he's this decrepit old
geezer. I was expecting a Doctor Strange Baron Mordo looking dude.
Yeah.
And he turns around and sees Isaac. Isaac, kind of charges towards him.
He takes out his giant mook.
And then the wizard puts one of the little crown of thorns around his head. Meanwhile, Isaac is resisting it because
he's got a strong willpower because he's a forge master.
Yeah, because I'm just like, how is he going to control a forge master? I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. He takes the dagger and
forces it to between his forehead and the crown,
and he actually manages to break it. Meanwhile, the wizard goes, "Oh shit!" and he runs over and stabs him in the chest, lifts him up, he dies,
and all the
people literally just drop.
Because the crown of thorns all disappear and they all just.
I don't. And then after that, Bodies by Drowning Pool started playing in my head.
Let the bodies hit the floor.
And so
it was.
He comes down and he comes out of the tower, and he looks at the demons and he was just like, "Kill everybody, but leave the buildings intact, because somebody
may come back to live here, or maybe they'll make a monument of it."
Whichever.
It seems like he's just going to be chilling there for a while, because converting that many bodies is going to take a while.
He's going to need to take a break every once in a while.
Yeah, because he still needs to sleep, because he is still human.
Yep.
But meanwhile, while that's all going on, we got in, and this is something they clearly did to sort of fool us, the audience, a bit. But they showed the other members of the Styrian Sisterhood discussing the logistics of Carmilla's scheme. And Strigo's just basically like, I have to redraw plans and try to figure out how to make this work, because we need bodies for the Forge Master, but we still need food stock. And then Morana, who's basically the administrator of all of this stuff, basically says, you know how all of the neighboring how all of our neighbors put up defenses against the 4 vampires in the castle in Styria, and it's like, yeah, they have a bunch of armies there, and Morana's like, they don't have that many soldiers. A lot of those are mercenaries. Mercenaries can be hired, can be bought, and we can basically just offer them more money. They'll come work for us, and they can reinforce our borders while we deal with everything else. And Lenore then goes to Hector, and it basically implies through that they no longer need to have him as a forge master, and she's seducing him basically, but implies like we could just leave. Carmilla is so lost in her own schemings that she won't notice that we're gone for days, and he's. Poor mad bastard's falling for it.
Yeah. Probably because he's getting tired of being treated like shit.
Yeah, and she's, like I said, in retrospect, she's still treating him like a pet, based on what we saw in episode 10. But to him, she's treating him more like a person. She's saying all the right excuses for why she has to take him out on a leash, because Carmilla insists. And all this other stuff, but she basically seduces him, and it's during episode 9 that they get it on.
There's a lot of getting on.
There's a lot of getting it on in episode 9. It's not just Lenore and Hector.
How do we set this part up? So yeah, Lenore and Hector, they're doing it because she, do we want to explain the ring that she showed him? Oh, yeah.
That was before they got to the getting it on. As she came over to him while he was reading the book, and he's talking about the vampire philosophy, he notices that she has a ring on her finger. And she was basically like, we all wear these. He's like, I hadn't noticed. And she says it's like a symbol of the loyalty that they have to one another. She mentions like the black and the red is the night and the blood that we share in common.
Oh yeah, the ring is on the
left finger.
Yeah.
Left ring finger of very very obvious, marriage, engagement, yada yada yada.
Loyal to yada yada yada.
All those sorts of things. That's almost sort of goes without saying a lot of times. Most of the time, rings are going to, significant rings like that are going to be on the ring finger. If they're not, there's usually another reason for it, but regardless, that's irrelevant. But while while they're getting it on, he is falling for her hard, and she gets him to say a lot of things, sort of like, be mine,
etc., etc., etc. And she was like, would you be mine?
And
yes,
he's like,
yes, I would. And
I'm yours. And then she's like, be loyal to me. And he's like, yes. And she says, say the words. And when he does,
the ring takes hold of him.
She slips the ring on him. That's the thing. He wasn't wearing it, but she slipped it on him at that moment. And that basically causes the ring to activate.
And basically enslaves him to her.
On pain of pain.
Yeah.
As she explains later. And, towards the end of episode 10, the other three sisters are basically like, Carmilla, finds out that Marana has come up with a plan to make her scheme work, and Striga is just sort of like, you're a genius for being able to figure this out. And then Hector comes in with Lenore comes in with Hector, and she basically is like, he's mine now, he's my slave. She shows off the ring and basically explains that because she activated the ring while he was swearing loyalty to her, any night creatures he forges will be loyal to her. And once her sisters put on rings of their own, the night creatures will also be loyal to them. Which is a brilliant little way to get around that loyalty issue with the night creatures, which was something that the sisters had addressed earlier in the season. They're like, night creatures are loyal to their forge master. If we're treating him like this, what is going to make him not turn them against us the moment that he can, kind of thing.
Yeah, and she clearly had this little plan, which, in all honesty, I would like to see her actually making one of these rings to find out, so we could see, like, what is the exact process that she goes to making these things?
Well, she mentioned that it was a vampire blacksmith, one of their own vampire magicians that had done this. I'm wondering if there isn't a drawback that to those rings, because he sweared loyalty to her, but there's got to be some way that he can make his ring affect them somehow. And Hector
he's probably going to think of a way to make it backfire on them.
He has that book.
Yeah.
And which is full of vampire philosophy and stuff. I guarantee you that there is something in there that he is going to find that is going to help him turn it against them. But that's season 4,
whenever that comes out.
Whenever that comes out. Meanwhile, so Trevor and Sypha captured one of the monks. They caught the monks making the alchemical mark on some of the houses in town. Which they had mentioned earlier in the season, can mean many things, but it can be used for death and transformation, sort of thing. I believe it was lead, I think, was the symbol, but it doesn't matter. Death, transformation. And so they capture one of these monks. They drag him back to the judge of Lindenfeld, and they interrogate him to try to find out what's going on. And the monk that they captured is just sort of like, we've been sending people away, a little bit day by day, but we've been sending them out to other towns and villages to spread the word of the visitor. And so that's what basically makes them decide, okay, we need, and when Germain shows up and tells them, hey, that demon that came here back during Dracula's rampage, it's still down there. It's still alive. That's when they decide we're going to go launch an attack on the priory. And the judge is like, we'll wait till sundown so most most of the people are in their homes, so they'll be out of harm's way, and I'll summon the men at arms to in stages so that we don't tip our hand. And Sypha's like, do we have time to wait till sundown? Yeah, maybe you should have done it sooner, because when they finally do muster outside the church, the monks have basically finished their preparations and they enact the ritual, which sets all those houses that got marked on fire.
Yeah, and it creates this crossing the streams look with the fire, because they all like go into the sky and
swirl around
and then go into the church. Now, mind you, the entire time that this is happening, I'm like, are they gonna create a cage or something and then like trap everyone inside and do whatever, or is it gonna create a
the second I saw all the souls of all those dead people in the flames, I was like, oh, this is basically fuel.
And it goes down to where the visitor is, and essentially goes inside because one of the monks carved a pentagram into its chest.
That was Sala.
And so this flame goes into the pentagram into its chest and basically makes it it's steroids.
Yeah, it's getting pumped up with all these souls, and it starts using that power to start opening the portal
to
the infinite corridor. Really, it's aiming it towards hell, but it's the infinite corridor nonetheless.
And we get this really nice Doom Eternal looking moment
as we go through the portal into hell.
And I'm fairly certain we got to get a pretty good a look of the different layers.
Mm-hmm. We got not all of them, but we saw a couple of them.
Because the very last one that it showed, and mind you, the entire time I got Doom music.
Yeah, I was like, why do I hear BFG Division?
As this is going, by the way, this is all CGI. And it's not the best CGI, but it's still pretty impressive for.
Then again, it's supposed to be otherworldly, so it sort of fits.
Yeah. So you see all the.
Then again, Netflix budget, so.
No, all their budget went towards Bright, and I think they're still recovering from that. Anyway, so. It's going through, like, all the usual, like, all red and grim and boring and
blood,
whatever.
Blood and twisted bodies.
And rivers of blood and yada, yada, yada. Anyways, it keeps going, and then it, like, flips around, and then it's the 8th layer, which is supposed to be, like, the
frozen over.
Yeah, literally, hell's frozen over. And it's going further and further down until we get to this, like, abandoned church-looking thing.
It was Lisa's house.
Oh, it was? I didn't notice.
I was like, I didn't have the words at the moment because right after that, as we're moving into the ruins of Lisa Tepesh's house,
and we see her and Dracula in the
just sort of embracing there in the ruins.
And Dracula, who I'm assuming could see the portal, or no, both of them could. They both like glance over, like.
And it's like, do you mind? We were having a moment.
So,
oh God.
So there was that to where, because this demon's goal is to obviously bring Dracula back. So the entire time, St. Germain is essentially in control of the portal at this point.
He's trying to aim it, but he doesn't really have the ability to do so.
Yeah, so meanwhile,
the visitor summons a bunch more demons for
a bunch more demons. They end up fighting them, and Sypha does. She uses a new element during this fight.
Yeah, we've seen her using ice and fire and air because she's used that to propel herself around the battlefield. Not full on fly. She uses fire for that. But
she Hulk jumps.
Yeah, essentially. But she used lightning.
Yeah, to electrocute this one demon that was standing over
really
water.
Overpowered demon. That thing was just like firing arrows like freaking crazy.
Well, the arrows were coming out of its hands.
Yeah, it was like literally just growing bones out of its hand and just using those bones as arrows.
So she electrocutes it, kills it. Meanwhile, Trevor is battling the visitor, and he's basically whipping it multiple times with the Morning Star.
And it's like, why isn't it dying? And St. Germain basically tells him why.
Oh yeah, that thing has like 1,000 souls inside of it. Good luck.
Yeah.
Every time you kill it, it just comes back.
I refer to it as a living philosopher's stone because it was very much like a Full Metal Alchemist.
The demon was Legion. We just didn't know it. For we are many.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true.
So during this badass moment here, Trevor is just like, I'm going to use my other whip for this one.
He dual wields his whips.
And he's just sitting there just whip, whip. And it's reminding me of the whip dude from Underworld.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that scene. I've only seen fragments of the Underworld movies. I just wasn't that interested in vampire and werewolf stuff at the time those movies were coming out. So
whereas nowadays you might be like, I think I'll check it out. But anyways, so he's sitting there just like one whip after another, and he's just smacking this demon over and over again. It's got all these like wounds on it,
and they've been taking their lumps during all this stuff. They're not getting through these fights unscathed.
No, they're cut up.
They're bruised. They're
Trevor got thrown against the wall,
slammed against a wall. But yeah. But then, as you know, St. Germain is trying to aim the portal to try to find the impossible library and the person within that's trapped within it. He finally realizes the demon is the one that's controlling it. So what does he do? He goes over, uses his gemstone, and hijacks it.
He jumps on top of its head, uses the gemstone, puts it in his eye, and uses that to control it. And that's when he uses it to close the portal to hell.
Just as Dracula was reaching towards it.
And then it opens back up, and there's the library, and the chick is standing right there.
And so
once again, we don't know who it is. All we see is a silhouette.
Germain, basically gets ready to jump off the visitor. tells Trevor, kill this thing. And that'll close. And it'll close the portal. So he jumps through. Trevor kills the visitor. Finally, takes some doing, but they do it.
He does it by essentially first off, the animation quality changed for this one.
Well, the animation quality. Well, the animation seemed to have changed a lot for the action sequences. I noticed it when Trevor was fighting the monks when he captured the scarred one, and it was especially noticeable during the fights with the demons in this episode. But yeah.
So anyway, at this point, like the visitor tries to launch a fireball at him. He takes both of his whips, and I swear it's like the whips absorb the fire, and he just goes and
the Morning Star absorbed the fire because it's a magical weapon.
Oh yeah, because the tip of it kind of opened up a little bit and contained some of the fire in it, and then he uses both in the same
snaps
time.
It down.
Snaps down. Visitor blows up,
and
St. Germain, who's at this point is on the other side of the portal, goes, "I'll close the portal. You guys might want to leave.
You guys might want to leave. I'll find you later." He did tell them that he will see them again.
Yeah. So it closes up. They leave.
And while the priory is collapsing around them, we need to address what was going on with Alucard and the twins.
No. We need to keep going with the judge.
This is true. Okay, we'll come back to Alucard and the twins. The judge, we need to rewind a little bit because a couple episodes before, we saw him
interacting with a little kid who was running around his neighborhood, and he said that one of the things that he doesn't tolerate is kids running around his neighborhood, around his town.
I was like, that seems a little bit intolerant of you, but you're otherwise. I was like, he otherwise seems like a pretty stand-up guy, so I'm willing to give him that little eccentricity. I should have trusted my instincts, but at any rate, with the kid, he basically he's stern at first, but then he's like, but I see you early every morning because you're trying to get the freshest apples, aren't you? And the kid's like nods. He's like, all right, then if you
go down this road,
take the backfield into the woods
where your parents tell you not to go, you take a right at the fork, you keep going all the way down to you'll eventually get to an apple tree. Now you're probably asking, oh, what's so special with this apple tree? Well, it's my own personal apple tree. I don't tell anybody about it, but if you want to, go ahead.
And as long as you don't promise not to tell anyone else.
And the kid tells him to take like 3 apples. It was the amount that he's allowed to take. The kid's like, yay! Takes off running. And the judge is just like, no running. Kid does it anyways.
Yeah.
And we don't see the kid again after that. We don't know what happened. We figured
I took it at the time. I just took it as a simple little interaction. But then, as Sala is running away from the priory, he bumps into the judge, and they have a brief little, like knife fight. But Sala's faster.
Yeah.
Shanks him, and the judge then basically tells him to take the backfield into the woods. Go turn right at the fork until you reach an apple tree, and you'll find your path to safety. And Sal's like, why would you do this? And the judge basically just is like, you were the better judge, or something like that.
Something along the lines of that.
But when Trevor and Sypha come across the judge after they escape from the priory, he's lying there on the ground. The knife is still buried in his chest, and he basically tells them that he killed Sala. And at first I was like, wait, what? But then he's like, find my knife.
I want to hold it.
I want it so that because I'm going to be waiting for that bastard when he gets to hell, so I can kill him all over again.
So, and then he basically pulls the whole delete my browser history.
He tells Sypha to burn his house.
He doesn't say why. He just says burn my house down. So they're like, okay. So they go and find this apple tree. Then, mind you, Sala fell into a pit with a bunch of spikes.
It was a man trap with a bunch of spikes in it. Died in a pretty nasty way.
I mean, one of those spikes kind of like went through
the back of his head and out his eye hole.
It's a bigger eye hole now.
Yeah.
And he essentially dies from numerous wounds and shock and whatever.
And as soon as that happens, we were both like, what? You were like, what happened to the kid?
Because that's when I was like, how many traps does he have around there?
And then, because Trevor and Sypha were also told by Sala, that, where to, or not by Sala, by the judge, where they could find Sala. And he tells them, take the backfield into the woods, go right at the fork until you reach an apple tree. And when they get there, they find the pit, and they find Sala's body in it. And then Sypha's like, what are all those small bones?
And then she's like, are those animal bones? And then you see, like, clothing in there.
And at that point, I was like, oh, no. And they go to his house, and Sypha was like, he said to burn it, but people could there might still be things, Trevor's like, I want to go inside.
He's like, yeah, I want to
He's like, there could be things in there that people could use as they're rebuilding kind of stuff.
So they go inside, and there's a key laying on the table. He takes the key, and he's like, oh, well, I want to see what's inside
inside this room.
Inside this room.
And because we'd seen the judge coming out of that room just before they did the interrogation of the monk. And he'd clearly been exerting himself somehow, because he was all sweaty and panting and everything. He composed himself very quickly when the others showed up, but
he was like, oh, shit, back to business.
Mm-hmm.
And so they open the door, and there's a bunch of shoes inside.
Children's shoes. It was a serial killer's collection. That's what it was. Let's not beat around the bush. That's what it was. And I was like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have trusted it, because it was Jason Isaacs who was doing the voice, and he does villains so damn well.
I really need to get you to watch Star Trek Discovery.
Oh, God. As soon as that happened, I was like, no, I wanted to like you. Damn it.
So they're like, you know what? Fuck this house. And
yep,
they go outside, and they just completely burned it down.
And as they're riding out of town, she is very depressed about how everything went wrong. And Trevor summarizes everything. And in a way, this brings it back to the whole, another person's story thing.
Yeah.
He's like, for 2 months, we lived your life, adventuring and victories. Now we're going back to my life. And I was like, oh, God, poor Trevor, because his life sucks. He every time he sees something that might indicate that people aren't all that bad,
they prove him wrong.
There is something ugly underneath that mask.
So they ride off into the sunset on the wagon that somehow didn't get burned.
Yep. And
with the horses that didn't get spooked.
And now we need to talk about Alucard and the twins.
So, anyways, so he's laying in his bed, can't sleep, and mind you, this is at night, and I'm wondering if whether this is, I don't know if he's trying to act human or if he's just trying to not be full vampire and sleep in a bed. But he's sitting there tossing and turning.
He's like, I wonder if I should get a coffin.
Well, he was in a coffin for, what was it, a year?
Yeah, recovering from the scar that his dad gave him. But he's lying there, just can't sleep, and then
the twins come in.
Yep. And they seduce him. They're like, it's time for your reward. It's like, you've been alone for so long, kind of thing. And as soon as they showed up, I was like, what are they up to? This is not just them trying to do something nice for him. This is...
They plot something.
They were up to something. And sure enough, and the timing of it happened almost the exact same moment that Hector got enslaved by the ring.
They were going back and forth with those scenes.
Mm-hmm. And it was for a good reason. Because they went back and forth between those two scenes, as well as the battle outside the priory, and Isaac versus the wizard, and the enslaved townsfolk. They jump back and forth between those four scenes. But they basically slap a couple of silver cuffs on his wrists.
They tighten around his wrists, and then they
spawn chains, essentially.
Yeah, around his body, and
the entire crucifix position.
The entire time, it looked like he was trying to break free of it, but he couldn't because he was trying to use what looked like
vampire strength.
Well, no, not really the vampire strength, but that little teleportation ability that he has.
The flash step, yeah.
Yeah, it looked like he was trying to use that, but because of this thing that's around him is preventing him from doing so. They're holding these daggers over him. They're like, okay, well, because you don't want to...
You don't trust us. You've lied to us. Just like everybody in the world has lied to us.
So we're going to basically gonna kill you.
Yeah, basically. And he's trying to... And he's insisting, I'm not hiding anything from you. Because one of the things that they kept asking him to do was show them how the engine that moves the castle works.
All he had to do was show them.
And he told them repeatedly the engine's damaged. He admits that it could possibly be repaired, but he doesn't really want to move it.
See, in all honesty, I feel like all he had to do was take them to the room
and show them,
be like, I told you.
But since they were asking if it could be repaired, I got the impression that he did show it to them off camera at some point. But there were other rooms in the castle that he wasn't showing them. And so that's why they assumed that he was holding something back from them.
And hence the magical weapons line.
Well, and plus one of the things that had gotten them to stick around was that he implied he was going to teach them magic. And he hadn't been doing that yet. And so they were like, you promised to teach us magic. They like, now, sort of thing. That's one of those things you kind of got to work up to.
But, he kind of really skipped around the bush on that one. Mm-hmm. I think he was just hesitant to do it.
Yeah, and plus, it's like, he'd been alone for a while. I think he was just enjoying having friends rather than students kind of thing.
So,
yeah, they're getting ready to kill him,
and then his sword shows up.
Flies through the air, slices their throats open, And as the sword is hovering there over the bed, he just says, "I said my father didn't like magical weapons. I never said I can't use them."
And that's when they both basically die in his bed because their throats are slit wide open. And so his story for season 3 ends with him walking back towards Castle Dracula with a basket in his hand through the woods, and
he's commenting just sort of like, I should have.
He's like, I don't know, maybe I should have put a sign up or something like
danger of death,
danger of death, abandon all hope, something like that. But I guess this will do. Dead old dad would approve.
It was the twins impaled, just like Daddy used to.
Yep.
Up through the anus, out through the mouth.
So yeah, they were the.
Yeah, because I was just, I was wondering, as all that stuff was happening in towards the end of the season, with Hector essentially being betrayed by Lenore, because he placed his trust in her and she stabbed him in the heart with it.
Literally.
Isaac still basically wants to murder the world. Trevor and Sypha got a full proof that even the people that you like are probably hiding something really dark. Well, Trevor already knew this, but Sypha got a hard lesson about it. Alucard got stabbed in the back by people that he had come to view as friends. We saw him before we got to the impaled them on stakes outside the castle scene. We saw him curled up in his old room, the same spot where he killed his father. His father's silver ring still on the floor where it fell.
I was looking at that ring and I was just like,
"What is
I was like, what is that with that ring?"
And it wasn't until I said that's where he killed his father.
I was like, oh, because I knew it was his old.
Yeah, and he's just curled up on the floor weeping about it.
Still naked,
but weeping, and I was just like, is this going to make Alucard start going evil?
I don't know if he ever turned evil in the games or not.
I mean, it's, he's starting to take after his dad now, leaving bodies impaled around.
Well, I mean, seeing as how they tried to kill him.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, that's the kind of thing that could start you on a path. We don't know full on what started Dracula down the path in this setting, specifically, to becoming evil motherfucker Lord of the Vampires. We know what started his crusade against the world, but we don't know what basically turned him into the cold-hearted
bastard.
I
said, I would like to see a prequel season that shows Simon Belmont.
Yeah. But Hector, like I said, he's gonna find a loophole to turn those rings against the sisters.
Seeing as how he has that book, because when she was talking about how the ring works, she said if he tries to run away or try to take it off, the ring will put him in such immense pain that it'll feel like he just shit out his own heart.
Mm-hmm. And
meanwhile, the entire time he's just standing there. And I seriously thought that she had him brainwashed at that point.
I think he was just shell-shocked.
And because after they left the room where her sisters are at, he started talking normally again. So I was just like, I thought the ring had you under like complete control, like a hypnosis.
Yeah, and he was pissed when he started talking again, because not without reason, because he's like, you made me into a slave, and she's, oh God, I mean, the whole thing about her treating him like a human, from his perspective, that's what it was. But in retrospect, especially when she tells him, I gave you what you really needed. I made you into my pet.
Oh, but she also said that she was also going to give him his own house.
Yeah, well, this is the thing that she negotiated with her sisters, is like, we're going to fix up the house out there. He's going to live in it. It's going to be comfortable and everything. We're going to give him freedom of the castle. He needs these things, kind of thing. But it's, again, she's just made him into a pet. And it's in retrospect, all of the interactions that she was having with him, treating him human, it was more just like she was housebreaking an animal.
Yeah, like she was just basically trying to tame him.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like it worked a little too well. Granted, she used the ring, and I'm wondering, if she didn't have the ring, what would she have done?
I don't know. That's kind of a moot point because it's clear she had the ring from the get-go. But there was another bit as when he tried speaking up in the room with all four sisters, she went, "Shh, the real people are talking." I was like, fuck. It's right back to the whole dehumanization thing that they had initially done to him when they first brought him into the castle, like chucked him into the cell butt naked and all of that. A little taste of hell and then a taste of heaven kind of thing.
So let's see what a taste of purgatory is like.
Yep. And so now season 3 is over. We know they're making season 4. Who knows when that's going to come out because it's production's probably been slowed down due to the pandemic. Not least because, well, getting people into recording booths to.
Because not everybody has their own in-home recording studio.
Mm-hmm. But now I'm wondering what's going to happen. Isaac, we know, now has a transmission mirror.
Big ass
one that can take multiple people at once.
I like how he was like, "I don't have to call you sir, do I?"
Yeah, a little callback to the little
to
the viewing mirror that he had that he got from the merchant back in Tunis.
Is it weird that I kept thinking that when she was talking about a merchant the magician with the mirror, I kept thinking to myself, I was like, was it the guy who gave him the mirror? Is that who she might be talking about? But then when they showed him, and it wasn't him, I was like, oh, okay, I thought it was going to be like, hey, surprise.
Yep. But yeah, so Isaac can basically come through that portal into Styria whenever he wants, because he knows. Well, his main goal is to kill Hector. Because he believes Hector betrayed Dracula. Yeah, Hector did, but Hector was duped into doing so. And he knows that Hector is in Styria. And so Isaac has this big-ass army. I don't know that how he's going to bring them all through the mirror at once, but he'll obviously just send them in a marching line, more likely.
The smaller one, that was only for viewing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, maybe you could combine the two mirrors.
Sir was just a viewing mirror. But he proved with the transmission mirror that he can use that to see things too. Yeah. Because the first thing that he did once he brought the mirror together was he checked where Miranda, the mad old woman left behind in the village by the wizard, he basically looked in on her. She was very clearly aware that he was doing so because she lifted her head and looked like right at him, and he just sort of smirked, nodded, and then basically opened the portal to see the town that he's now in command of.
Yep. So he has a whole town of corpses to play with.
Mm-hmm. And it's like I said earlier, it's gonna take him a while to convert all of those things.
Do you think that for season 4 there's going to be another time skip?
I'm guessing there probably will be. It's probably not going to be a very long one, though.
Probably not, because they're going to... otherwise they're going to have to show Trevor and Sypha aged a little bit.
I suspect that if anything, it'll probably just be another month or so. Just enough time for Trevor and Sypha to have reached another major settlement of some kind, town or village, where something's gonna drag them into the conflict, or maybe they head back to Castle Dracula and the Belmont estate to check in on Alucard.
They're probably gonna look at the front door and go, "What the hell happened here?"
Because something's got to bring Alucard back into the plot.
I was honestly wondering, what do you think the big battle would have been like if Alucard was involved with it? Like if they brought him along with them
in Lindenfeld?
Yeah.
Probably it wouldn't have taken them nearly so long to fight past all those demons.
And he probably would have killed all those monks himself.
Oh, yeah. He probably just would have flash-stepped around with his sword.
No, he would have just stood there, let his sword do everything, like...
Except I get the impression he doesn't over-rely on the sword's magical properties. The one time I think we saw him use the magic part of it was when he first was woken up from the coffin, and he just sort of held his hand out and it Mjolnired itself into his, into his hand.
I'm still worthy.
But otherwise, we only ever saw him basically using it like a sword. He was flash stepping all over the place, but that was just vampire, his vampire
abilities. It's one of the qualities of being a Dhampir.
Mm-hmm. Who knows down the line if he continues to delve into his vampire side? Because we saw him trying to vamp out while he was bound up by the twins. His eyes changed color, and he had more fangs in his mouth as he tried to burst out.
I was wondering what he was. I was like, is he gonna break out or something? And
is he trying to Hulk out or something? And who knows? Maybe the sword was like, "Master is in trouble." And the sword's hovering there. It's like, I heard you were talking shit. But it was a great season, but it got real dark real quick. The last episode was just sort of like, fuck.
And then, would you say it was mainly because of the judge or everything?
Well, I mean, the judge, and the twins, and poor Hector and the sisters and everything. It was just like, first the judge, and sends Salah off. I'm like, wait, what? Why are you sparing this guy? Why are you sending him off to the? What is at that apple tree? and then we see and then we see the pit, and I'm like, oh no. And then it's like they layered the horror on top of one another. First the pit, and then you're like, wait,
where's that kid at?
Where's the kid? And then Sypha sees the bones. Oh no. And then they find his serial killer shrine, and I'm like, no.
Damn it, we were just getting to start liking you.
I was thinking that they played against type with Jason Isaacs. But, season 4, they're clearly setting up for Forge Master versus Forge Master there. I said that when we did the part, I think we said that at the end of season 2, that it seemed like they were going to be setting things up that way. And then after the first half of season 3, we were both like, Forge Master versus Forge Master is totally going to happen in season 4, most likely. But it's just like, man, I just don't really know how our heroic trio are going to reunite and get involved in the plot.
Most likely, they're probably going to realize that shit's too powerful for them to deal with themselves, so they need to get Alucard to help.
Yeah, maybe that's what'll happen. They stumble across Isaac's town, and they realize what's going on. They're like, this is too many demons for us to deal with. We need to go get back up Alucard. But definitely enjoyed it. Definitely feel like I should have been gotten into the series before we started Bingecast. But hey, it gave us an excuse to watch it. When season 4 comes out, we're going to do a Bingecast as soon as it drops.
Oh yes, definitely.
Maybe not like a full binge straight through. We may just split it into parts like we've been doing. But nonetheless, we are going to binge it as soon as season 4 drops.
Definitely. Whenever it gets announced.
Whenever it drops, and then obviously we'll work it around our respective work schedules. But yeah, definitely enjoyed it. Anything else you feel like we need to add?
No, I think we pretty much talked about everything that was in this particular season.
Yeah. And there's not really a whole lot else to...
Oh, the toilet paper line.
Oh, God. Oh, it was a running gag in one of the episodes. As we're watching this, we're constantly, being like, that's a Warren Ellis line right there because of the dialogue. Because we know that he writes the series. But when St. Germain bumps into the judge the same morning, the judge sends the kid off to go pick apples. He sees St. Germain, and St. Germain makes some... how did the line go?
It was something like, he was like, oh, well, it seems like those two have taken a particular interest in you. He's like, yeah, they wanted to talk with someone who's seen toilet paper, and the judge just goes,
"What the fuck is toilet paper?" And Jermaine said it's a Chinese thing or something. It's a Chinese secret or something. Later that same episode, as he confronts Sala about the missing pages from the Necronomicon, Sala makes some comments like, they probably tore it out to use it in the toilet. I hear the Chinese do that sort of thing. The two of us just started laughing our asses off. I mean, the Warren Ellis lines, but you were like, every time that somebody dropped an F-bomb, you're like, is that Ellis? I'm like, Ellis is more than just curse words. Well, it is creative cussing.
You're more familiar with his work than what I am.
Yeah, I should let you borrow some of my copies of Transmetropolitan over there. I don't have the full range anymore. I left some of them. I got rid of some of them during when I moved, but I kept the ones that I liked. I get the impression you'd probably enjoy them.
Quite possibly.
And some of the themes in in the volumes that I have there seem very relevant today in the current political climate. We'll leave it at that because we don't want to talk politics on the Bingecast. That way is a surefire way to alienate people.
Unless it has to do with like the plot or character development or whatever.
Yes, unless politics plays directly into the creation of the series kind of thing, or if it's one of the themes in the series. We don't talk politics here. We don't talk religion here, because that's another way to really quickly alienate people.
Well, George Carlin said it best himself, and there's some courtrooms in the South that need to have the unspoken one. Keep thy religion to thyself.
Mm-hmm. That's all we're going to say on that subject. But yes, that about wraps up this edition of the Bingecast. We've been talking now for... It's going to be close to an hour and 20 minutes because we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Also, let us know what your favorite moment was in the first 3 seasons of Castlevania.
Yeah, if you have watched the series, please let us know what your thoughts are in the comments section. Again, you can reach us on email or social media.
And also, what do you think is going to happen in season 4? And which Castlevania game is your favorite one?
Yeah, there you go. Email at binge.cast.crew@gmail.com or at binge.cast@outlook.com, or you can reach me on Twitter at J2KWinger. But for Chris, I'm Jay, and we'll see you next time. 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 Next time.